morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, June 28th. Oh boy, it's the end of the half year. We're going into Q3. I know I've said this on the last few broadcasts. Please wake up. If you are not on track to hit your goal by the end of this year, it's not too late for most of us, but take action now. I get a lot of calls as a sales coach and trainer, which is what I am for those of you who don't know me. I get a lot of calls at the end of the year by panicked people saying, Jeff, I'm not going to hit my goal. It's December 1st. What do I do? Start working on next year, because you should have called me in January of this year or March. So there is still time. So do the things that you need to do. Prospect your rear end off. Call everybody who told you they were thinking it over. There's plenty you can do. Feel free to reach out to me if I can help. If you don't know me, I am a sales coach and trainer. I work with individuals and organizations all over the world to help them get measurable and sustainable sales increases. And I founded the Sales Pro Network. It's a little over 4 years ago now, to elevate the profession of sales and to give salespeople a place to network with each other, to come and get great advice and coaching. And I've invited a lot of my competitors to be in the group. It's a free group. And every Friday at 10 a.m., we either do a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales, or I do a live training, and today is no exception. For those of you who have joined us before, and if my voice sounds a little weird, I'm struggling with COVID. I just got diagnosed a couple of days ago, but I think I can make it through this. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to today's guest, because I'm very excited. She's an award-winning theater director and producer, which I'm very impressed with, being a Broadway buff. She taught improv at the world-famous Second City, which I'm even more impressed with, because some of you know I do stand-up comedy on the side. And she's a masterful speaking coach. Please welcome today's guest, Meridith Grundei. Good morning, Meridith.
Good morning, Jeff. And I am so impressed that you are doing this interview while sick at the same time. That shows that you are committed and passionate. I love it.
Well, I just love speaking. Oh, wait
Yes.
a minute. We're having trouble streaming to you. No, that's okay. Okay, sorry. Got a little notice that we were having trouble streaming, but it's all good. You should be able to see us right now live on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So, Meridith, before I get to the 1,000,001 questions I have for you, tell us a little bit about your background. What brought you up to this point? What made you into a speaking coach?
Oh, that's a really amazing question that you just asked. It was through a series of several things. Yes, a performer, stage actor, always loved it. Started off as a dancer, because I was not always somebody who actually felt comfortable speaking in public. I was actually that kid who sat in the back row and would hide because I was afraid of the teacher calling on me and then sounding stupid or not having the answer. And so it was just best to just be hidden somewhere else. And it was through dance that I started to use my voice, because I had a dance teacher say, I want all of you to pick one line to say from the stage about what you want to be when you grow up. And my line was, when I grow up, I want to be just like Wonder Woman. So that was the first time I ever spoke from stage. And clearly have not become Wonder Woman. In other ways, I have. And another woman came up to me afterwards and she said, you should take acting classes. You have a really great stage presence. And so I did. And it was through working with a script and playing a character and kind of hiding behind that, where I didn't really feel like I had to show up and be myself, that I started to develop confidence, and I was able to start speaking more and more and more. And then it wasn't later on in life until I moved to Chicago to study improv, where that's when I really started to find my voice, because you can't hide. It doesn't matter if you're playing a character or not playing a character. You are sharing your point of view, and you are making stuff up on the spot all the time in this really amazing collaborative way. And so I fell in love with improv. And at the time I was teaching after school programs. I had started my own after school program myself called Theater Monkey, where I was teaching kids acting and devised theater, which means they make their own shows themselves. And one of the core faculty members of the Second City was there and said, hey, I really like what you're doing in your curriculum. Do you want to come help create the curriculum at the Second City? So I was instrumental in helping develop their youth program there. And then one thing led to the next, and I was teaching adults. And then I taught a couple of corporate gigs, which means that I went into companies and I taught improv as a way of developing heightened communication skills, developing trust amongst teams, and so forth. And I'd get tapped on the shoulder and asked, hey, can you go help this executive over here who has this high stakes presentation happening? And then I got to work with an executive coach who would then bring me in and work with global teams, teaching them presentation skills and also continuing with the improv trainings as well. So one thing led to the next. So that became a supplemental way of creating an income, a living for myself while I was still doing acting gigs. And I ended up getting my master's degree in theater and had a really awesome career doing directing and acting and improvising and creating shows and doing all this stuff. And then I realized that I was a little bit like, that was this chapter of my life. And now I really want to just hone in on this public speaking stuff because I am seeing the difference that it's making. I'm seeing the difference that it's making for people who are more technically brained to really figure out how to simplify their messaging, include story, humanizing it, and then reaching more customers. And so that is what I've been dedicating my time to do. And I absolutely love it. And I hope that answered your question.
I believe you did. And I like the way you leaned into the mic with
Like
that.
that?
I do. And you lowered your voice. It was very cool.
Thank you.
Great control. By the way, not just because I'm a comedian do I love Second City, but I grew up in Chicago. I don't know if it's still that way, but it used to be down in a place called Piper's Alley.
Yeah, yeah.
Being an old guy, it was like the center in Chicago of the hippie era. And my aunt and uncle used to love the hippies, and they would come pick me up at my mom's house, mom and dad's house, and let's go look at the hippies. We'd go down to Piper's Alley. There was a great pizza place down there somewhere. I can't remember, but just fantastic. I'm curious. There's a lot of things I'm curious about, but
yeah.
Talk a little bit, if you would, about improv and trust, because trust is crucial for salespeople. That we have to get people to like and trust us. Talk a little bit about that, can you?
Yeah, well, I think it's several things. You have to have trust before anything else, I feel, especially if you want to motivate someone or inspire someone, you have to develop that trust with them. And so that's why story is so important. And that's because story is important because of you're showing your true self, your true spirit, which we can call authenticity. And then you're also showing and developing empathy. So when you get to share things like story and you get to do exercises that develop that empathy muscle, you start to see each other in a different way. You start to see each other's point of views, and you start to see that we actually have more commonalities than we do differences. And there's also play. We get to play with each other. We get to laugh with each other. There's nothing better than laughing and laughter that brings a group of people together. That's why I think happy hours are so, like, that's what people do for team bonding, is like, let's go get a happy hour drink, because people start to drink and then they start to laugh and then they start to bond. But there are other ways that we can do that without going out to happy hour. And I think that's why improv is such a powerful tool. And you're also learning how to fail in front of each other through these games, these exercises, these structures that have no real world consequences, but the lessons learned and how they are applicable to the real world are just tremendous. And so when we have these little opportunities to fail fast and adapt and communicate with each other in a different way, where we're hearing each other and we're truly listening to each other, then that's when trust really starts to develop. And that's why it's so it's such an incredible tool for people.
Yeah. And isn't it part of it that I took one course in improv, so I don't have your expertise, but you have to trust the people you're doing improv with. It's a big part of it is not making the other person wrong, the whole yes and thing. It's always building on it, which means you have to have those listening skills and those empathetic skills, and it's making the other person look good and taking off from there. And if you don't trust them, it's not going to work. Am I right?
Exactly. It's always about making your partner look good. One thing we would always do just before we got on stage is we'd give each other eye contact. We'd tap each other on the back and we'd say, "I've got your back." And then we'd go out on stage. Yeah. And so that is the community. That's the culture that I love to cultivate, is I've got your back. I'm here to lift you up, because when you rise, we all rise.
Yeah, and that's different from stand-up, because it's not always I've got your back. There's a lot of I hate you. You're getting too many laughs, and you're making me look bad. There's a lot of that in stand-up.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, I don't want to follow that guy, or thank God I get to follow that person, right?
Yeah, I actually went to a show the other night. I wasn't in it, but I was watching it, and there was a guy like that. I'm like, thank God I'm not going up after that guy.
Yes, exactly.
Just too great, I think I'm very aware of where I am, in the comedian continuum, and if guys like Seinfeld are at 100 and one is the beginner, I'm maybe at 40, but the guy who was there up there was 85 or 90, just
Oh,
killing.
it's so funny. I have a friend who does the open mic nights at Gotham here in New York City, and she said that she showed up and she was put right after Seinfeld, and she's like, "Are you kidding me? Like, what are you doing to me?"
Part of the gig.
It is.
I often struggle with, do I want somebody to go up and bomb so I look good? And
I
actually, I
know.
don't. I want the audience laughing before me, because if they're not, if somebody bombs, and I've had that happen. I
Yeah.
actually did a show in DC where the host bombed completely, horrible. There were 10 comedians on the show, and again, I know who I am. I'm a funny guy. I'm not the funniest person in the world. I was the best comedian on the show. The headliner bombed, and I should never
Oh,
be the best person on the show.
we should all be, like everyone should just write. And that's the thing too. I always say to people though, and I love that you brought this up. Not everyone's going to like you, right? Like everyone has a different taste. They're going to hear a different message. They're going to like different speakers. So when it comes to public speaking, I always say to people, even if you're just doing a social media video, right? Like not everyone's going to like you, and that you've got to be okay with that.
Yeah,
You just got to keep showing up.
it's such a great point. I had a friend who is a professional comedian, and he gave me some really great advice right after I started. I called him up all excited. And his name is Greg Kettner, and
Uh-huh.
I thanked him for all his support and pushing me to give it a try. And I said, "Man, I can't tell you how much I love getting laughs. Getting laughs is the greatest thing in the world." And he said, "Let me just change your perspective for a second. Instead of going on stage to get laughs, go on stage to give laughs." A very
Mm,
different come from. So it's not about me being loved, although I do feel the love when people laugh. It's
yeah.
about giving generously. It just really changed the way I perform.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
No, I think that's an incredibly that's a very valuable lesson.
Yeah.
Is it's not about you, it's about your audience. It's about how you're going to best serve them and communicate with them so they're not confused and they feel like they've been taken care of.
Yep. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Tell me about your crush on Madonna when you were a little girl.
I was
We all had a crush on
obsessed.
Madonna back then. I
I
certainly
was
did.
obsessed with her. I was so obsessed with her. And it's so funny because I just watched Desperately Seeking Susan with my daughter the other night. And she was like, "You look like Susanna Arquette." The one, yeah. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I kind of do." Anyway, side note. I was obsessed with Madonna so much to where I would wear the netted or the lace glove, and I would always wear that big bow in my hair. I was such an awkward sixth grader because I also had to wear a retainer. So I just loved her, and I remember "Like a Virgin" was the first song that I was introduced to in girls. I was in Girl Scouts. I think it was in the Brownies, and then I signed up and did a competition with my friend Mona Mehta and Hillary Watts, where we were in elementary school, and there was this like weird talent competition. I don't even really remember what the stakes were, but we bought these outfits, and it was oh, what was it? Now I can't remember. Blue. Oh my goodness, I can't remember now. But anyway, we did this whole performance piece where we lip synced. And then the other piece of it is I wanted to be on that lip syncing show. Do you remember that one?
I don't remember the name, but yes, I do remember what you're talking
As
about.
Madonna. Yeah, I was just obsessed. I was obsessed with her.
She was great. I mean, she ruled the. She was what's her face? Taylor Swift back then.
She was, and she was what I loved about her is because I grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado. It was a pretty suburban lifestyle. Everyone kind of looked the same. And there was something about her that was just like super rebellious. And I'm like, yeah, I want to be that.
She was a badass. There's no
And I
doubt
think
about
my
it.
parents would say that I was a little bit on the rebellious side. So
Good for you,
thank
Meredith.
you, Madonna. Thank you.
Perfect. So you're a public speaking coach and a consultant. What's the difference between your coaching and consulting assignments?
So coaching is more of that the one-on-one. I'm going to do a deep dive. I'm going to help you really refine your talk so that you feel like it's stage ready or you feel like it's ready to present to your colleagues, whomever. The consulting piece is more along the lines of like, okay, so let's just talk about what you've been doing. What has your messaging been? How can we make it a little bit better? How can we look at this technical information here, and let's look at those visuals of yours. Let's make sure things are lining up so that we're not complicating the information.
Got it. Okay. Here from It's a Small World. Mark Siegel, who's a personal mind trainer, says, "Too funny. I did props for that movie. The village voice with the ad. She makes a heart around with lipstick."
I
Wow.
love it in Small World.
So what type of clients do you work with? Are you working with individuals these days, organizations? If so, what type?
Yeah, so I have two different types of clients. I have the individuals, the entrepreneurs. I have a program called the Confidently Speaking Program that is designed for you as the speaker or the budding speaker to come in and practice your speaking skills. We hold a class every Wednesday. It's live on Zoom from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern time. It's an amazing community of human beings. We do improv exercises for speakers so that you're going to practice those things like the behavioral skills, your vocal clarity, your physical nonverbal skills. We're going to practice being more adaptable. I give challenges, like I'll do LinkedIn Lives and spotlights with each person that is in that program. I will have them think about things like, how are you entering into spaces every day? Like, notice what you notice your own behaviors. So I'm encouraging them to constantly be in investigation. And in that program, as well as a self-paced course that you can take that's going to help you develop a presentation structure that's going to work for you each and every time.
Mm.
And then I work with individuals one-on-one, entrepreneurs one-on-one, achieving whatever goals they have as speakers. That means it could be more internal. It could be for work. It could be because I want to start developing and getting my brand name out there. So I want to be speaking in more networking rooms. I want to be doing more social media. I want to feel more confident on camera. I want to get a training together that people can take. So I've got a myriad of people with different sets of needs that I work with one-on-one. And then for the other side of it, I work with companies. So one of my companies that I'm working with often is Amazon AWS. I'll work with their engineers. I work with financial institutions, and I also work with the science and medical field as well to help them better communicate their new discoveries, if you will, and or their products to customers.
All right, now you've got me curious, but how do you work with Amazon engineers? Because when I think of engineers, I think of, guys and gals who like think about how to put things together and make things work and build stuff. What do you do with them?
Well, my whole thing is that there is a human at the end of every product. There is that user is a human being. So we need to be bringing in a little bit more emotional connect. And we need to understand better who our audiences are and the level of expertise that each audience has. And oftentimes I have noticed that they get so bogged down in the features and the details of things that those are the things that the customers don't ultimately care about. What the customers care about is the solution to the problem, as you well know as a sales coach.
Correct.
And so I'm helping them really just get down to what are the need to knows for that particular audience. And then also being clear about who that particular audience is and their level of expertise. And so I have to say, engineers are some of my favorite people to work with because I feel like what happens is they were just waiting for someone to give them permission to have fun. And I mean, if I can get a bunch of engineers in a Zoom room to do jazz hands, I feel like I have won. I feel like I have won.
I got to tell you, I love the way engineers think. I love the way their minds work. And I didn't realize, everything we have, an engineer put that together. And I only realized that because my daughter graduated college last year. She's an aerospace engineer, literally a rocket scientist. And, she'll point out, that clock, some engineer designed that, everything, not just rockets that go up, very cool stuff. I want to come back. You mentioned, I had a cringe inside when you said your friend had to follow Seinfeld at an open mic. The first thing was, what the hell is Seinfeld doing at an open mic? I'm always stunned because, there are some comedians here on Long Island that I have just the hugest amount of respect for. Not famous, but people who've been on TV. Yeah. And I'm always stunned when they show up at an open mic. I'm like, a guy like me goes to open mics, but they all do to come work it out. But I believe it was actually Jerry Seinfeld who said that there was a survey, and it said that people's number one fear in life is public speaking, followed by death and followed by snakes, number three. And he says, in other words, people would rather get bit by a snake and die than speak in public. Why are people so afraid of speaking in public?
Oh, I think it's a myriad of reasons. I feel that people have a fear of failure. I feel that people have a fear of not sounding educated. Oftentimes I will hear, I'm so afraid of forgetting or losing my place. Uh, People have a fear of judgment. And I feel like it's also just primitive too. We go into that fight or flight response because we think like we feel like perhaps on a primitive level that that audience, they're going to get up and they're going to attack us, right? And none of that ever happens. And if you do forget, it's okay because the only one that knows that you forgot is you. And so it's really about developing those muscles so that you can bounce back with grace. And so I do feel that there's a myriad of reasons why people are fearful of it, or because someone said something to them when they were younger. Like for one thing that I have struggled with my whole life is singing. And I am married to a musician, and he always gets mad at me every time he hears me say to another person, I'm not a singer. He goes, yes, you are. But you just, I was told when I was really young that I wasn't. So I believed it. So I feel like there's so many things that I encourage people to just take baby steps. And I feel like that's why I developed the Confidently Speaking program, because that's an amazing place for people to take the baby steps and have a community where they can practice, so that they can get on those stages, they can get on camera, because it is a legitimate fear and it's big for some people. It causes anxiety. But I feel truly that the world would be a much better place if we could bravely start sharing our stories and start, even if it's just a product that we're sharing, there's still an opportunity for story and connection. And so that my mission in life is to take every presentation and incorporate humanness so that we can start noticing our similarities more than our differences.
Yeah, I think there's also a fear of just looking stupid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I look stupid all the time. I've gotten over it.
I'm a comedian. That's my job, to look stupid.
I know. Sometimes I like playbacks of things like this, and I'm like, good Lord. Like, what is happening with you?
Yeah.
But it's like, it's fleeting and nobody cares as much as you do. Honestly, nobody really cares that much.
Well, I think the key is forget comedy for a second, but as a professional speaker, you don't want to be boring. I used to have a partner in my business, and before either of us would take the stage, we always had a little ritual, fist bump and don't be boring, and because that's the worst. And in sales, you have to have your unique selling proposition. What makes you different?
Yeah.
Whenever I'm asked that by a VP of sales, if I'm going to do a training, I speak to sales trainers like you all the time. What makes you different? Well, I've got a background in theater and stand-up comedy. Did you ever go to an event, and even though the speaker's information would have been useful, you were bored to tears and you wanted to poke your ears out with red hot pokers? It's not going to happen with me.
Nope.
Your people will be engaged and entertained while they learn to sell more effectively. So yeah, you can't be boring.
Well, and I think that I will say the reason why it's important not to be boring is because when you're boring, and I mean this with love, kind of, you have wasted your time and you've wasted everybody else's time. And the likelihood of you selling that product could have been, your ROI could have been out the roof if you had just put a little bit more effort.
Yeah, a little excitement, a little enthusiasm. You can't be boring. When you show that you love what you do and you believe in your product or your service, it comes across.
It does. So why waste time? And why waste those opportunities? And if that doesn't matter to you, then I think you needed to be doing some reevaluation of what you're doing for a living.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, when you said, fear of forgetting what to say.
Yeah.
I was never terrified, but for the first, I think, 2 years of doing stand-up, I always had an index card with my, here are my jokes, not written out, but enough so I could follow them. I always had it folded up in my back pocket just in case. And I can still remember I was standing on a stage one time in Hempstead, New York, and I just went blank. I'm halfway through my set. Could not. I actually stood there like this. Hold on a second. And I pulled out my index card and I said, let me see what other stupid shit I was going to talk about tonight, which of course brought the audience back, gave me a laugh. And I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. But yeah, that fear of forgetting, I always say I'm a looking good machine, and I don't mean physically. I don't think I'm a beautiful person physically, but I don't want to look bad. I don't want to look stupid or wrong. So yeah, there is that fear probably for many people.
Yeah, I think it is a huge fear. And I feel the one thing that people can do that they can practice to prepare themselves for that, you're practiced, right? You've been doing this for a while. You know how to work the crowd, right? You know how to bounce back from those moments. Many people don't. And I think that's why it induces this anxiety, which is I have noticed just through improv exercises that, again, no real world consequences. But what people commonly do in those moments is they start to hold their breath. They hold. They're not breathe. They stop breathing. And so it's very difficult when you stop breathing and you're holding and you become rigid in those circumstances to bounce back. You've just stopped functioning in a way. So I feel like what people can start to do is incorporate a breathing practice that regulates that vagus nerve, that when you do get into those situations where, oh, I just went blank, you just go to the breath, go to the breath, take a pause. And most likely, most of the time, you're going to figure out what then to do next. But when we don't do that, we start to panic. And then we start to show the audience that we have forgotten. It becomes obvious, right? So I feel like there's things that we can do to prepare ourselves for those situations.
And I know you're big on authenticity, and I find that's crucial too, because
Yes.
It's getting worse as I get older, but I have been known to lose track of my thought. I'll be teaching something, doing a training, and I'll go into a story which drives home the point, and I'll get to the end of the story, and I'll turn to the audience and go, "Why was I telling you that?" Because I really don't remember it. Being that genuine, there's always somebody who goes, "Oh, you were talking about this." Yes, thank you so much. But I think even though I'm a looking good machine, you don't have to be perfect.
No, you don't. Perfectionism, I always say, is highly overrated. And I feel like I love that you brought up perfectionism because I feel like, yeah, just be where you're at. Speak the truth. You don't want to put too much energy into it, right? You just want to move on. And then the other thing is, I just lost my thought. Look at that. I just lost my thought. So never mind. I
Well,
don't know what I was going to say.
I've got plenty more questions for you then. So many people are coming to me concerned about AI taking over the world.
Yeah.
And I think there is a concern that, I don't think for salespeople that we have to be concerned tomorrow, but we could be replaced eventually. I don't think it's going to happen in the next couple of years, but what's your vision of the future for professional speaking?
Oh, I'm going to give you a rough draft thought about that. Is that okay?
Sure.
So my rough draft thought about that is I feel like anything, um, first of all, AI is not going away. And so my feeling towards it is there's always dark and there's always light to everything. I choose to be educated enough about it to where I can use it as a tool. And I will continue to educate myself about it and continue using it as a tool rather than being in fear of it. So, with that being said, the future, I see that we need human connection. And I truly believe that things will neutralize, if you will. Like the pendulum always has to swing. We always have to have reaction. But with a action, there's reaction and so forth. So I feel that actually AI, like I use an AI tool with my clients. It's called Udly. And I feel it has actually been quite helpful to work in concert with that because it gives my clients the opportunity to have an additional place to go practice. It does get AI analytics. So they're also being nudged when I can't be there to nudge them. But there's nothing that's going to replace the human. AI can't see now, at least in the tools I'm using, like some of the little nuances in body language, whether you're a little bit more enclaved or if you're moving a lot extemporaneously while you're speaking because you're unaware of physicality because nerves are taking over and that's your body's way of calming itself down. Like AI can't right now pick up on those little teeny tiny nuances. So I feel like I even have some ideas for how I can use it in the future to help my clients when I
Exciting.
can't be around.
Got it. And I love what you said about the human connection, the human touch. I interviewed a guy for a sales position for one of my clients yesterday, and he was telling me how much he loves going to trade shows and shaking hands and meeting people. I was like, yes, there are so many people who live through texts and or hide behind a desk and don't leave the office anymore. And having sold for 49 years now, a lot of things have changed, but one thing hasn't. And that is in almost every case, people still do business with people that they like and trust.
It's
And
true. It's true.
it's hard to trust a robot.
Here's what AI cannot replace ever, which is they've done studies that the reason why theater and storytelling and being in an auditorium and sitting next to each other is so important is that people's heartbeats actually line up with each other. You cannot experience that with technology. You can't. And you can't experience that in-person kinesthetic response, that energetic flow that goes from person to person to person on a cellular level. It's a very different experience than being in a Zoom room. You can try. I've had some amazing experiences in Zoom rooms, but it's nothing like being in person.
Yeah. When I've had, guests come to New York and I'll say, do you want to go to a Broadway show? And they'll say, well, let's just go to a movie. It's the same. I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Not.
It's a magical experience
Yeah.
each and every time. I promise you, it's not like going to a movie,
No.
guaranteed. All right, we're talking to Meridith Grundei, and I'm losing my voice completely. We're going to take a 60-second break from our sponsor, which is me.
Hi, I'm Jeff Goldberg, the founder of the Sales Pro Network. For nearly 5 decades, I've been selling, managing, coaching, and training salespeople internationally. And I'm often asked for one-on-one or private coaching, but it does involve a substantial investment. For that reason, I've recently developed the Sales Pro Insider Network community. It works like this. We get together twice a month on Tuesday nights from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. At the first session of the month, it's you and me, with me taking your questions and giving you the advice and help you need to both prospect and sell more effectively. At the second session of the month, we'll have a guest coach speaking on a fascinating topic that helps sellers like you and me. And of course, we'll do group coaching then too. The best part is the investment is just $27 for the first month, and there's no long-term contract at all. In fact, you can cancel at any time. Go to crushsalesgoals.com. That's crushsalesgoals.com. I hope to see you there.
And I do hope to see you there. We had an incredible guest last week. He was Craig Siegel, who is a mindset coach and wrote the Reinvention Formula. He talked to us about how to develop a bulletproof mindset to unlock your potential. And this month, actually July 23rd, I believe it is, I've got Michael Leibowitz, who is the Mind Magnetizer. He's a branding specialist. Amazing. I've met this guy before. Incredible. I hope everybody will join. If you have a question about it or want to speak to me or just want to attend that session for free, DM me. You can reach me through the Sales Pro Network on Facebook or through LinkedIn. Happy to send you a free pass. Let's get back to our guest, Meridith Grundei, who is a masterful speaking coach. Meridith, the National Speakers Association says that out of every audience you speak in front of, 1 out of 10 people should be interested in what you've got. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do business with you, but they should have an interest. And personally, I find speaking to be a great lead generator. I speak as often as I possibly can. Salespeople need to speak with confidence. How can we polish our delivery skills? And what tips do you have for being more confident when presenting a solution to a prospect or speaking in public? Is it simply a matter of practice, or is there more?
I feel like it's practice. I feel like it boils down to practice. I notice that people are, they don't spend enough time practicing. I can't tell you, my dad was in financial services, and I remember him always saying like, oh, I have to put a presentation together for tomorrow. Right. Like that's not a he was a confident guy, but like, that's not a well-practiced presentation. So I feel that there is a structure that one can go through that a lot of people don't really know how to practice. I can't tell you how many times when I ask a room full of people, how many of you get up on your feet and practice your presentation out loud? I might get like, Jeff does. Everyone in this room does. But many people will still just sit at their laptop and scroll through their presentation, maybe mumble it out loud, but they're not getting up on their feet. They're not saying it out loud. They're not envisioning that audience in front of them. They're not putting in the reps. And we all know when you put in the reps, you get stronger, you feel more confident. It's the same thing with speaking.
Yeah, I agree. For sales training, I don't have to practice much anymore. I've done it gazillions of times, but for stand-up, if I'm doing a show, I'm in my living room holding a microphone, not just pretending to. I have a literal microphone, and I'm practicing my set as if the audience was there.
Yep.
He's behind me, so I got to spell this. I'm WALKing the DOG, and I'm saying my set out loud with the right pauses and everything, because, I believe that, when somebody's coming to see you, whether it's a free show or a paid show or anything else, you owe them to give it your best shot every single time. And I can always tell when somebody gets up there and tries to wing it. Robin Williams was able to wing it.
Robin Williams was able to wing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
He
most
was
people,
good.
it's just not that way.
No, and there's stand-ups that are really good with the crowd work, and there's some stand-ups that are not, right? And so I feel that that he was really good with like he was so good with crowd work that he was able to. Yeah.
It was a particular mind. But there's a whole controversy now about that. Too many stand-ups are doing all crowd work instead of actually having a set. And there's a controversy.
Yeah.
Should you have a written set? Should you just rely on crowd work and make it spontaneous? There aren't that many Robin Williams out there. And again,
no,
I can always tell when somebody's winging it.
No, and the thing I want to say about that too is that the thing that people don't realize about improvisation is that improvisation has structure, right? And so whether it be a game, I used to do improv at IO in Chicago, and we learned the Herald, right? The Herald is an improv structure. It's long form improv. So we had beats, like we knew like we're going to open with a game, and then we're going to do scene 1, then scene 2, then scene 3, and then we're going to do a game, and then we're going to go the beat 2 of scene 1 and beat 2 of scene 2. But we knew that structure, and we practiced the heck out of that structure. And only the groups that had been doing it for a very, very long time started to break out of that structure because they knew that they knew how to break the rules. What happens often is people they don't even have a structure, so there's no rules to break. And I feel like that's where a lot of people fail. They don't think that they need a structure. They can just wing it. They can just do it off the cuff. And actually that limits you.
Yeah, and I think it also comes back to the trust that you talked about earlier. There's what are the names? There's a special. I think it was a 4-series special. Oh, I think it's Middleditch and Schwartz. Have you ever seen that?
I
think it's on. I think it's on Netflix. Thomas Middleditch. He was on Silicon Valley.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, these two are both, they're well-known actors.
Oh, I do know them. Yes.
And they did 4 specials of just improv. The first one I watched and I'm like, okay. I mean, bad improv is just horrendous, but good improv is brilliant. The other 3 I watch and like, oh my God, I can't believe how these guys are coming up. And there is a structure where they are making stuff up on the spot. It is, give us a place, give us a thing, it's just amazing how they do it when they do it well. One of the things I know you work on is how to optimize our use of space. Should we stand in one spot when we're giving a speech? Should we be moving around? How do we optimize our use of space?
Oh, that's such a brilliant question. Well, first of all, if you have an opportunity to walk the space before you give a talk, please do. Always talk to the person who's planning the event to understand what is going to be in the space and how it's going to be used. Are you going to have confidence monitors, which are the monitors at your feet, teleprompting, or is there going to be a teleprompter? Is there going to be a podium on stage? How is the audience going to be set up? If you have agency over that, you can ask to have the audience set up in a certain way that's going to be more conducive to the way that you're facilitating training or speaking. So space is hugely important. I am not a big fan of the podium, and it's I have seen it often used as a crutch where it's either
You're
the
hiding.
person hides behind it and they hold on to it,
Yeah.
or they're halfway behind it. Here's what happens when you're not consciously practicing with the idea of what's in the space with you. And I've seen this often too, is that someone will just start pacing back and forth on the stage. They're looking at their confidence monitors, and I will notice that they start to gradually gravitate towards the podium because it feels safe.
Yeah.
It's safety. So it's so important for us to practice how we're going to stand, to look at video if you can of yourself, or have somebody like a coach be there to help direct you, because you're completely unconscious of what those movements are if it's not practiced. And I have seen so many people pace so much to where it's incredibly distracting, because you're not really hearing what they're saying anymore. You're just watching them pace back and forth, or the swaying, right? And
One spot from foot to foot. Yep.
from foot to foot. And those are all reactions to your body just trying to calm its nervous system, right? So I am a big fan of, like, let's just stand and deliver. And then when there's a reason to move, there's a change of thought, there's a change of idea, then move. Or you want to go, you need to bring in more audience, right? And there's a change of thought, and you're going to move over there and you're going to speak to them. Or you're going to focus over here and you're going to finish your thought, and you're going to make eye contact with one person in the audience. And then maybe move to the center, do the same thing, and then to stage right, same thing. So it's about intentionality. It's about moving with purpose. Most people do not move with purpose. And I feel like that's where they fail. If you're someone that's going to pace a lot, I'm going to put you center stage. I'm going to make you stand there and root yourself, right? And then you also have to think about, where are your visuals? Sometimes you'll just have the screen right behind you, right? Sometimes you'll have two screens behind you. You're in the middle. So it's really an art, and it is important, because that space between, and people don't realize this, and might be a little bit too much out there, but the space between that podium and your body and your relationship to the audience is telling an unspoken story.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of podiums. I want to walk around. And one of the things I was taught is, don't forget the people in the back of the room. Don't just look at the people in the front. You got to look around for everybody, constantly moving
it up.
And I love what you said about walking into the audience before you speak. I always go to different parts of the room to see, what's that stage look like from here? Who do I need to speak to here? Love that. And Mark Siegel is asking a question. Do you recommend Toastmasters for practice?
I don't not recommend Toastmasters for practice. I feel that any practice you can get is great practice. I feel, I have not ever taken a Toastmasters course or have been a part of Toastmasters. I know that it has helped a lot of people. I feel like it's probably a good place for the reps. And I know they do some extemporaneous speaking exercises in there and so forth. The only thing I always say to people is, be careful for sameness. I would say, because I strongly feel like, if you want to be a speaker, what is it that differentiates you from other people? I don't know if that's something Toastmasters covers or not.
Yeah, I was invited to go to a Toastmasters session once, and so I went. But this was after already being a professional speaker for years. And I think for somebody who is brand new or who's struggling, great place, because they do give you a safe space to practice and get feedback. I sat there and went, okay, this is a little bit under my level. I don't need this. But yes, look, any chance to practice. I always say, look, book yourself at a local library or a Kiwanis club, or go to safe spaces. It's why when you take a comedy class, you typically at the end of the class, you get to go up on stage, and it's all your friends. Everybody's taking the class, invited all their friends. Very safe space. You're going to get a bunch of laughs, and it's great to feel that. And then you get into a real gig, and it's like, oh, why isn't everybody laughing every second of every day? Oh, because they're not all my friends. But
they're not all my friends. Well, yeah, I took stand up at Gotham, and it was super fun. And we had 11 ladies. We were all laughing and lifting each other up. And, you know, Mark, I will also say that just to answer your question about the Toastmasters, the reason why I put together the Confidently Speaking program is to give people a safe, brave space to come practice, but using improv as my basis.
It's great. Meredith, what do we need to know about using visual aids like PowerPoint?
Oh, where do we start? Where do we start, Jeff?
Avoiding death by PowerPoint?
Oh, where do we start? Well, first of all, the question I always tell people to ask themselves is, do I need visuals? And if the answer is yes, great. Okay. Now, if you've really gotten clear about, here we are with that word structure again, what your presentation blueprint is, and you've figured out what those key takeaways are the visuals that I'm using supporting those key takeaways, supporting my message? And if not, then do I need it? Okay. So and I feel like don't start ever with your visuals. I have so many people that will start with their visuals because they start to kind of like map it out in that way. Start with your outline first. Get really clear about who your audience is. What do they need? What don't they know? What do they need to know? Then figure out what your objective is for them. Then those key takeaways. Then you get wrap that conclusion back up to the introduction, whatever it was that you were doing, if need be. And then get clear about your call to action. Then go and look at those visuals that are going to best support your message. Once you do decide on those visuals, and let's just say it's a technical talk, make sure that they're clean, that they're very, very limited text. Please get rid of bullet points. There's more creative ways that you can go about conveying a message. And then if you have things like architecture or data that you are presenting, make sure that what you are saying is lining up with what they are seeing. Oftentimes what happens is I will see slides where there's so much information on it, and I don't know where to look. And so I'm trying to figure out what you're saying and match it with what I'm looking at. And so by the time that slide, you're done with it and you've moved on to the second one, I've just identified it and I haven't listened to a dang thing you've said because you're competing with your slide the entire time. So it's really, you have to think of your presentation as an experience. You have to help your audience understand and guide them through that experience. Just regurgitating data and showing visuals is not helpful to them. And that's where you lose them.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like limiting text and using pictures.
Yeah, just make it so simple. Yeah. And simple's hard. I get it.
Yeah.
Simple's hard.
To me, the number one sin with PowerPoint is reading your presentation. It's all every word is on the slide. Well, they didn't need you then. Everybody can read it, and they're not paying attention to you. They're reading the slide.
They're reading the slide. Yeah. Well, can I say one more thing about that, Jeff, which is this is what I often hear when I'm working with companies is that, you know, I work with a lot of compliancy things, or it's been passed by legal or HR put its stamp of approval on it. So there's sometimes there's no wiggle room. Sometimes there is. But oftentimes I hear it's because somebody else is going to read it. You're either going to be sending it to the CEO before the presentation, or it's going to be archived on the company's website. And so we need all that text on the slides. So I say, if you can, see if you can have two different versions of that deck, the version that you present and the version that people are going to read. Because you shouldn't be presenting the version that people are going to read. And that's what I see most of the time.
Yeah, that's what I know is death by PowerPoint. The worst.
And that's the only reason why that we keep seeing that over and over again is because someone in marketing said, oh, we have to put this on the website because other people in the company need to be able to read it.
Got it. Speaking of HR, my favorite part of every organization, I've had guests on this show drop numerous F-bombs. And I've received messages from listeners afterwards saying that it completely turned them off. Now, I like to swear. I try to avoid doing it here. How do you feel about the use of words that are considered swear words in a professional setting?
Well, I always feel, first of all, I cuss like a sailor.
So fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. I've gotten better.
I read your blog.
You read my blog. You did? Oh, good. I feel like there's actually studies that say some like little bits of like sprinkles of swear words build trust, right? Because you're like, oh, I can relate to that person. They just said shit at a company meeting, right? I feel like it really just largely depends on uh who you are as a human being and what you care about. If you care that it's going to turn someone off, then maybe don't swear. But if you don't care that it's going to turn someone off, then I say a little bit is okay personally, because you want to attract, if it's not attract, you want to attract, what am I trying to say? I'm just going to repeat that over and over again. You I personally want to work with people that want to work with me, right? And so if I say shit and they're okay with that, that's a good sign. But if you know what I mean, like you want to find like-minded humans to work with.
Yeah. It's
I could have said
incredibly
that much
dangerous.
more simply.
It's incredibly dangerous in corporate America today because, and everywhere, people are just waiting to be offended. And I can't remember his name right now, but I had a guy who it was F-bomb after F-bomb after F-bomb on this show. And afterwards I said, hey man, you swear a lot. I mean, I swear a lot, not on the show, but I swear a lot in life. He goes, oh, it's in my contract. Every client I go to, it says I'm going to use the word F, the fuck word, constantly. And if they don't want to do that, I'm not working with them. And he's a pretty well-known guy.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting though too, and I'm also curious about the gender dynamic behind it as well, because you see someone like Gary Vee who swears all the time. Obviously, he's a successful dude, and he can get on stage and drop the F-bomb and wear a hoodie and get away with it. A woman gets on stage in a hoodie and starts dropping the F-bomb every other word. It's completely like they're going to be perceived completely differently, even if it is completely authentic. That's where I push back and be like, ladies, I mean, let's own it. That's who you are. Fucking own it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up with gender, and I'm not sure if it's a sign of my age or what, but there are some female comedians that I think are very funny, but it turns me off when they use the P word too much. Like, do you know Nikki Glazer?
Yeah,
I think she's hysterically funny, and sometimes I just cringe. I'm like, you don't need that. And there are a couple of others, but maybe it's because I'm a man, maybe it's because I'm an older guy, but it does turn me off a bit. I still love her. Like she did that roast recently. I don't know if you saw it.
Oh, I didn't see that roast. No.
Oh my God. She annihilated. It was brilliant.
Oh my, well, I feel like it's about you. We talk about comedy. We talk about, I feel like it's about timing. And so it loses its meaning, it loses its energy, it can become, if it's overused, just like anything else, it can become annoying because you're just sitting there kind of going, isn't there a more creative thought or word that you could use to replace the F word that you just dropped like literally 10 times in the last 30 seconds? I feel like it's timing and it's knowing your audience and knowing, feeling and this is the thing I say to my clients all the time, like, notice what you're feeling. Are you feeling connected with your audience? And it's not the head, it's here. If you're throwing out F-bombs left and right here, and it's not here, and you're not getting a sense of who's in the room, then you're probably going to turn a ton more people off than you think you're going to turn off. So I think it's a little bit complicated. And I also think just don't use it as a weapon, right? To hurt another human being. I say that to my daughter. I'm like, you can't use bad words as a weapon. If you stub your toe, I get it. Right?
Yep, absolutely. And I love that you said know your audience, which is crucial. I'm pretty sure I've told this story before, and I'm going to make it much shorter than I normally do. But I had a prospect that brought me out to his office, which is about 45 minutes, an hour from my office, 4 times over a 3-year period, and never pulled the trigger. And on the final ride out there, after he said, I need you, come on out. I'm on the way, and I'm thinking, if this guy doesn't sign a contract today, I don't care if he calls me up and says, Jeff, I've got $100 bills pouring out of my pockets with your name on them. Just come pick them up. I'm still not going back. So on the way, I'm decided this is it. I'm not playing games with this guy anymore. I'm not taking this ride. Walk into his office, and I said, Jim, I want you to know that on the way here, I invented a new close, and I'm going to use it on you right now. And he laughed. He put a smile on his face. He goes, "Go ahead, give it your best shot." I said, "Let's just do this effing thing." Except I used the F word. Now, I knew my audience because he had used that word with me a number of times in casual conversation. Normally I would never say that to a prospect in corporate America, but with him, I knew I could do that. And he said, "You're right. Let's just do it."
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Huh?
Yeah, I think it was Guy Kawasaki who I read. I don't know if you're familiar with Guy Kawasaki. Yeah, I think, oh my goodness, I'm quoting something I think it was Enlightened was the name of the book. He talks about this. Like he talked about like in the conference room where I think he heard this team member heard the executive used the word shit. And so he used it and it actually built automatic trust. I believe it's been a while since I read the chapter, but you just reminded me of that.
Got it. You recently had an interaction with an older woman, and when I say older, she's actually my age, at the Orlando airport. Can you tell us about that and what it taught you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was sitting there waiting for a flight. I think I was going to Orlando, and I was at Newark, and I was sitting there, and this woman was just yelling at customer service, and she was so upset because her flights were canceled. She had a car rental in Denver somewhere, but I think she was rerouted to Denver. So it was a pretty loud conversation. She was pretty mean to this customer service rep, and I was at the point to where I was like just going to leave because I didn't want that energy. And then she hangs up, and then I'm sitting there and it's quiet for a little bit, and I look over and she's just she's got tears in her eyes, and you can just see how alone she felt. And also I think part of it too was that she had maxed out her credit card. And so she needed that money to be reimbursed to her card so she could, when she was in Denver, rent a car. So I'm sitting there going, oh God, like, do I offer her $300? Do I do I talk to the airline and see if there's something I can do to help? Like all of a sudden what it did was I saw her and I saw the pain she was in, and I wanted to help her. So I got up and I walked over to her and I sat down and I just said, "I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I couldn't help but overhear your phone conversation. I see you're in pain, and I want to know, is there anything I can do to help you?" And then I asked her a couple questions like, "Have you talked to the airlines?" And she started crying again. She goes, "This is the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me."
Wow.
And I said, I just want to make sure you're okay because I see you're here alone." And she, and then I started tearing up. And then she said, "I'm good. Thank you so much. I've got a community of people in Denver who are going to help me when I land." And I said, "Okay, I just want to make sure." And then I had this moment of like, I don't know where to go now. Like, I can't go sit back where I was before. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll just go buy a bottle of water at the kiosk, right? So then I got up and walked away. But it was, it's just that moment where it felt really scary to do, but I felt like we are all just trying so hard in this world that I just felt compelled to reach out to her.
Yeah, I was very touched by that story when I read it. And one of the many things that my favorite coach taught me was everybody's doing the best they can.
Yeah.
And that was a very hard lesson. I was like, no, they're not everybody. And I realized they may not be doing what I want them to do, but everybody really is trying their best.
They really are.
And you never know what somebody else is going through. You just don't.
No.
Anyways, I'd love to talk to you all day, and I certainly
know.
Except we're out of time. So I'm going to share my screen. And if you would, please tell people how they can reach you if they're interested.
Yeah, well, if you scan that QR code, you'll be able to connect with me there. I'm here on LinkedIn, so please do follow me. You can follow me on YouTube. I have quite the TikTok following where I give public speaking tips. So if you're a TikTok person, you can find me there. And if you are somebody who wants to develop your confidence as a speaker, or you're more seasoned speaker and you're like, what's this improv thing? Please join Confidently Speaking program. I would love to have you.
Love that. And I'm ashamed to admit that I love TikTok beyond belief. I'm actually hoping that Congress does shut it down so that I don't wake up at 3 in the morning and go, okay, I'll just look at it for a few minutes. And then, 3 hours later, it's like, oh, time to get out of bed. I watched TikTok for 3 hours. My dog has a TikTok channel, Beach Pug Duke.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up, and we'll follow each other on the TikTok.
Well, I'm working on one for my sales stuff too. At any rate,
Amazing.
thank you so much for sharing your brilliance so generously. You're delicious. And I'll end this as I always do. Gang, please remember, sales is a game of making things happen. Get out there and make sales happen. By the way, there will be no broadcast next Friday. It's 4th of July weekend. I'm going to take it off. We'll be back the following week with another great guest. Have a great weekend, everybody, and a great and safe 4th of July. Thanks again, Meredith.
Bye. Thank you, Jeff.